Hey everyone, Chaps here, and it's been a while. I've been pretty busy, and with the Microsoft Bethesda Showcase coming up tomorrow, I figured I'd throw something together. Hot topic has been the speculated Marcus Fenix Collection. It hasn't been confirmed, and it really all stems from someone saying that they heard there's going to be an Xbox franchise getting something similar to what the Master Chief Collection had. Obviously, as a Gears fan, the Gears franchise comes to mind, but should we really be expecting this? Personally, I don't have high hopes. I'd certainly love to see one, I just don't expect that we'll be seeing it, and that stems from a few key questions. First up, who's the target audience? Second, what would be included? And lastly, but probably most importantly, is how profitable would this investment be for the company? As I try to answer these, the feasibility of the collection just becomes lower and lower. At least it does in my mind. But then again, I'm not a developer, so I may be way off base. Back to the target audience, there's a few possibilities. One that gets brought up all the time are the new players. There's no question that a remaster, or even just a port to the new console as well as PC, would open up the franchise to new players. Yes, it's currently backwards compatible, but that doesn't quite run as smoothly and it misses the PC audience. The other main choice is essentially just doing a fan service, making it to appease the current fans. We'll hit on that more in a bit, but of course I need to bring up that third main category, and that's players who enjoyed the old games but have moved on. Now naturally, a game can somewhat serve all three of these categories to some extent, so yeah, it's not just one or the other. But which target audience they're aiming for will dictate what's included in the game, which was the next big question. If you just have the campaigns, you can hopefully bring in some new players as well as some who are just nostalgic for the campaign. The existing player base will certainly enjoy it, but that's not really what they're after. For many existing players, having just the campaigns wouldn't offer too much in terms of replay values or new experiences. The next step would be introducing some multiplayer aspects, either co-op or versus. This has potential to hit some nostalgia and or bring back some of the existing player base. It may bring some new players to multiplayer, but if we're being honest, the multiplayer isn't what's causing the new players to get the game. If they wanted to try some new multiplayer game, they could have just joined it any time. The addition of the campaigns is really what brought them in. Multiplayer is just a bonus. But now we get to the tricky part. To what extent does the multiplayer get added, if it even gets added at all? And this is where I think we have a problem. I mean, to start with, the Gears community can't even come to a consensus as a whole as to what they think should be included in it. I'll cycle back more towards this towards the end of the video, and I'd actually like to have some discussion with you all about what you'd like to see. Comment down below and cycle back near the end of the video and we can discuss it a bit. To take things further, adding multiplayer can somewhat be seen as TC not only trying to bring in new players, but also bringing over the existing audience to this new title. It's like they're trying to take people off of Gears 5 and put everybody into this one solitary game. So with the current audience now part of the target audience, will TC actually be able to please everyone? Probably not, but I'd argue that even getting it to the point to please a subset of people would be quite a challenge. Which brings us to that final question, is it even financially viable? It's pretty clear that a Fenix Collection would hope to bring in some new fans, and how would these new fans, and honestly existing players, going to experience it? Well, that's through Game Pass. Game Pass is great, and that's how I play most of my games, but I suspect it really moves your financial goals. In the past, with something like the Master Chief Collection, there was a large cash flow up front due to the one-time purchase. Then any microtransactions or what have you help sustain the future. Remember, this game came out before Game Pass. With Gears, the cheapest way to bring in new players is simply to remaster the campaign and forget multiplayer. That said, there's not much to be gained financially through this, as the campaign doesn't have in-game revenue streams. Perhaps it could be viewed as a long-term investment, where they're taking a loss here in order to hopefully attract more people for something like Gears 6. But even then, it's a big risk of not converting people to multiplayer where the real money is. And when talking expenses here, I'm not just talking about how much it would cost to create and publish a game, but also think about opportunity cost. Would a Marcus Fenix Collection really provide a big enough boost to make it worth doing over spending those resources on something else, like Gear 6? This goes even further if you start adding multiplayer into the mix, which is bound to have long-term support needed in the form of updates. In this Game Pass-dominated environment, I really struggle to see how this collection would be financially responsible for the Coalition. Again, I'd love to see one, and I'd play it, I just don't know how realistic it is. And a big part of that is, well, let's cycle back to the possibility of multiplayer. The only way I see this collection being viable is with a massive multiplayer aspect to it. It needs to be something that will basically kill off all the other Gears multiplayers, including 4 and 5, and bring everyone in. This is the latest and greatest Gears multiplayer until Gears 6 comes out. And personally, I'd like to see them do something like this in the form of free-to-play standalone Gears multiplayer. But on the topic of the Marcus Fenix Collection, what would be needed in order to attract and retain the player base? And this is where I'd like some input from all of you. What would you need to see in order to stick around? Let's start simple. Beast Mode? Some would say Gears 3 doesn't seem complete without it. It's rather standalone and has limited replay value or potential revenue streams though, but with Gears 5 inclusion of Hijack, maybe some of the mechanics wouldn't be too bad to add. In either case, I see Beast as a bonus or fan service that shouldn't be expected to bring in or retain any real fans. So the question is, if Beast Mode isn't going to really be the thing that brings in and retains fans, is it really worth the time and effort to put it in the Marcus Fenix Collection? What about Overrun and Survival? Well, I feel that Survival could probably be pretty easily cut, and that is if they're even including the Judgment material. Overrun, on the other hand, was a brilliant mode that many would love to see. Is the development time to recreate this mode, and the maps that go with it, worth it though? I don't know. Now a big one is Horde. Would you guys expect to see Horde in a Marcus Fenix Collection? I know many that would, and some are hit or miss on whether or not they care about it. But how would it play? Would each game be limited to its mechanics, i.e. Gears 2 mechanics on Gears 2 maps? Or would you be able to play any game with any game's mechanics on it? Like maybe play Gears 2 maps with Gears 5 mechanics and Gears 3 enemies, or something like that. How are the enemies going to blend across the various mechanics and the various maps? When you add new enemies and you add these new mechanics, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't taken into account on the old maps that could really cause a big problem. So it starts with this really simple concept of, should we even have Horde in the Marcus Fenix Collection? And then once you say yes to that, all these other questions add up and it starts to get really complicated. But even that is a minuscule ask when compared to versus multiplayer, which arguably has the most passionate and polarized portion of the fanbase. So which game mechanics would the game use? What about tuning? Would the tuning, or tunings plural, continue to get updated? If you stray too far from what the game had at the end of its life cycle, you'll get blasted with hate. But many weren't fans of some of the ending tunings, so there's going to be a constant cry for additional update. It's kind of a lose-lose. But regardless of that, how would each mode play on each map with various different game mechanics? This is all just the tip of the iceberg, but I think you get the point. Many want a mix and match type thing, but I fear that the development efforts to make that a reality will prove way too much. That leaves us with each game almost being standalone, maybe with the exception of progression, unlocks, and maybe some custom match options. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's far from what I've been seeing many request. The last thing I'll drop in here is about matchmaking. If you merge all of the games together, or if you keep them separate, it's still a ton of playlists. Gears has always suffered from having too many playlists and too low of a player count, thus making longer wait times. I'm just wondering how a Fenix Collection could accomplish this without seriously infuriating many players. It really boils down to this. Yeah, the Coalition could make a Marcus Fenix Collection, and it could just be the campaign. That would be great and bring in new players, and people would get to re-experience those campaigns. I don't know if it would make enough money in the short term, but maybe bringing in those players will help in the long term. If they start adding multiplayer though, which is what a lot of the current fans, really want and are expecting from this, at least from the discussions I've seen online, then the game's going to get very expensive, and I don't know if it's really going to be able to include everything that people want. So it's going to be disappointing for current fans either way, at least the way I'm seeing it. Now, none of this is to say that a Marcus Fenix Collection couldn't happen, or that it's not happening. These are just various points to think about that, when combined, start to make it a pretty ambitious task. So I'll leave you with this. If we don't get it, that's fine. Let's have hope for the future of Gears, be it Gears 6 or whatever. If we do get it, be open to things outside of what you were expecting. There's just too many variables at play, and there's no way it can live up to everyone's idealized expectation. Especially being that vision is different for everyone. It can still be great, and it can still be what's needed, but just temper your expectations. Thanks for watching, everyone. Enjoy the showcase tomorrow, and hopefully it won't be too much longer until I make some videos again. See you later.